I look at the summer transfer window and I look at last summer transfer window, and I think they made it very clear that they won't spend money that they haven't got. So we didn't get Mazraoui and De Ligt until they'd sold Wan-Bissaka, and that's why they didn't go on the pre-season tour. We didn't get Agate until we'd sold McTominay, and that's why Agate wasn't fit until October, because he hadn't really had a pre-season. So in a summer where we're already hearing Mateta's price is going up because they know we want him and everybody knows we're desperate, I see a summer transfer window where we're already scraping the bottom of the barrel because, let's be honest, people are going to go to Liverpool or Arsenal or Chelsea ahead of us because of the Champions League, and they're more cash rich. Also, when we do home in on a target, I think clubs are going to go, well, you're desperate, hike the price. Or if they want one of our players, well, you're desperate, drop the price. So I think that it's unrealistic in my mind, and I hope people are right when they predict that we'll be okay. I think we're going to have a really difficult summer transfer window. And that's not, I mean, I'm still hoping we'll win the Europa League, and I still think we'll have a difficult transfer window, which means I think we'll have a difficult season and we'll have another 9 months of this. And God knows what that will bring, because there's certain voices in our fan base and there's certain media outlets that haven't got the mental capacity to back a manager in circumstances like this. So we'll start with the Amorim out. He needs to change his system, which Ineos will have to resist, which will put more pressure on them. And then next summer, if we're not in Europe again, I just wonder where we need 500 million now for that squad. Forget the stadium. And I don't know where that's going to come from. But I do know the Premier League has never been so competitive. And I do know that I don't see a drop-off from Liverpool, Arsenal anytime soon. Chelsea, Newcastle, Villa, I think are very interesting projects. The only drop-off I can see is if Man City get done. So I just look at it and I go, I look at it and I go, yeah, 5 to 10 years, this could be great. But over the next 5 years, I can't see a strategy at all to get Man United back. What I will say is that doesn't mean I'm right, Terry's right, or wrong. Because you look at Leicester winning the league, you look at Nottingham Forest last year to this year, you look at Bournemouth. If you can get the right collection of players playing the right style of football, you can defy the odds. But that's even more concerning because we don't have incredibly, and I really actually just thought this. There's a lot of things I think in that interview that could have been asked. But you know, quite rightly, everyone's obsessed about debt and this, that, and the other. Why wasn't he probed about this? Why wasn't he probed about that? Another question I would have loved to have asked, and I don't think it was a bad question to ask, and I don't think he couldn't have asked it. I mean, unless maybe it did get crossed off before the interview. But I would have said this to him, Terry. You sacked Ten Hag, well done. Why did you appoint Ruben Amorim, who quite clearly plays a very distinctive style of football that this club has never played and is going to need very distinctive players that you don't have? Therefore, you're going to have to spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's the thing that worries me, because I still think we haven't got those players.
I would have loved that question, because it's one that's mulling around in my head, and there's some negative connotations. There's some really positive trains of thought that I have. And it's only a theory because it's in my head, and I wonder why. I'd have loved that question to be asked. The other reason, though, why I don't want it to be questioned is this. One of the positive feelings I have is that they believe that Ruben Amorim is one of the next great managers. If he could build, and he does. And the problem is, I don't want the club to say that about him, though, because it builds a pressure. When Ten Hag said era's come to an end, it was a great, in the moment, we were like, yeah, go on, Ten Hag. But that was used against him for 2.5 years. I would rather that the club say nothing of the sort. I would rather them not answer the question and leave that particular area a little bit ambiguous, because I don't want additional pressure being applied to him. But my gut feeling is very much this. And this is why as well I'm not panicked yet, and maybe I'll be more I'll panic more next year. So I think bring him in mid-season. I think the players have been told in no uncertain terms, there's no more Downing tools. There's no more, we don't want to play this way. You can moan all you want, but if you don't adapt, you're not good enough, you're gone. I think all of this has created a bit of a pushback subconsciously, consciously from other players, which is why the performances and the results have been very, very up and down under Ruben Amorim. But what I've been trying to look at since Ineos came in is differences. So as much as not everyone's happy about the stadium, well, it's a difference. Not everyone's happy, like myself, about the cuts, but we're operating in a different way. And when we heard Sir Jim say yesterday, the club kept on employing more and more people when it couldn't afford it, that makes you sit there and think, who the hell was running us in the first place? Like, whether you like Ineos or not, it doesn't make any sense to increase your outgoings by 200 million, but only increase the revenue by 100 million. So I'm seeing differences that I'm intrigued by. I see a difference in how even the results under Amorim have been compared to a lot of other managers' sort of knee-jerk starts. And my hope, and it is pure hope because I'm not internal and I don't have the answers because I'm a fan on the outside, is they see a manager that actually, if we start the process now, add 4 or 5 players of the right profile in the summer. What we're not doing in the summer of 2025 is starting flat-footed. And it might take until November, December for the drills and the training to really start making the team work. We've had 6 months before preseason of implementing what we want. And the hope is that next season we're further ahead than if we'd kept Rude as an interim until the summer. That's what my hope is, that they would say in that moment. The fear would be, well, we don't know. We just think he's a good manager, and a really kind of bad answer. But I think a lot of this in terms of us, and this is what I would also say about our improvements. The results next year, I think, are going to change a lot of people's moods, because had Amorim come in and we were brilliant and we were currently sitting 4th, and now this stadium was announced, I think there'd be less scrutiny about it. And I think the results of the team on the pitch will dictate everybody's attitude towards a new stadium build, debt. We've saved around £75 million in cuts so far. That includes player salaries. £75 million of savings, if you amortize that over 5 years, is £375 million of money we have to spend on players based on the savings we've made so far. Now, we're never going to spend that amount in one summer, and we'd be stupid to. But if we're able to spend 200 million of that, what we save through reducing salaries, selling players, that doesn't include sales, by the way, you sell players as well, and all the costs that we've saved around the stadium. If we could have a summer where the recruitment is good and we say, oh, that new centre-back, those 2 new midfielders, that new 10, that new striker is working, we're suddenly 6th, 5th in the league, pushing for the top 4, looking like a good team that could become a great team with even more investment. That, I think, is what Ineos, Barada, Amorim need to fight for next season, because I think the results on the pitch will ease a lot of the pressure off of it, and maybe can just let them work with a little less scrutiny, on their shoulders, as it were. So this summer is absolutely massive, because if we buy badly, if we start the season poorly, with all the distrust towards the owners, the disdain we have for the Glazers, next season will be even harder than this one. So for them, listen, they're rightfully being scrutinized. I think fans have to keep the foot on their neck. Even though I'm supportive of some of their decisions, I don't believe in just ignoring them and letting them get on with it. We should be on their necks every day. But I think the recruitment this summer, in the short term, is the most important element for this club for the next 5 years, because if they have a terrible summer and waste another £200 million, that's where I'm totally in your camp, Mark. I don't see how we then start digging our way out and building a new stadium without massively cutting back from the first team. I think we've got a window where we can spend well, but we have to spend well.
Yeah, I think the summer, as I've said before, is a flip of a coin. I think he needs to be given £200 million. Let's not forget, it's his first summer as a new manager. It's a demand. He must be given that money because, let's be honest, Mourinho, Ten Hag, Ollie got it. But listening to Sir Jim, I'm not convinced the money's there. So I think it's a flip of the coin whether that money's even there. On one hand, it might be. On the other hand, it might be, well, I've told you there's no money and I'm selling Garnacho. So we'll have to wait and see that. Going back to what you said about the manager, you hope they know what they're doing. Or did they just appoint a new manager? My fear is I think they just thought he's a good manager, he'll do a good job. Because if they didn't, you and I know, and everybody watching knows, if you look at United's profile of team under Ten Hag and you look at Amorim's profile of team at Sporting Lisbon, they are poles apart. So anybody who knows football would say you can sack Amorim, you can sack Ten Hag and get Amorim, but you do need at least £500 million over the next 2 years for him to change that team around. It's like turning a boat. It can't go in the same direction. So did they factor that in? My concern, as I say, is that all we ever hear about is cuts and there's no money. So why did they bring a manager in that they know they've got to spend money on? I think on the summer, though, it's again, what I would say is it's not just about purchases, it's about sales. And it was interesting, you mentioned it a couple of times, that you look at Rashford and Antony. I think Amorim was behind that, and to be fair, he was backed, which we know Mourinho famously years ago said, I don't want Martial, I don't want Shaw, and the club were like, well, you're keeping them. So I will always applaud a manager being backed. It's amazing it's taken 10 years for that to happen, but they are on loan. Casemiro is still here, and he did say in that interview that I've got to pay for Onana, Rasmus, Sancho and Antony in the summer. So you might think, well, he wants to get rid of all those players. But as we know, we're terrible at getting rid of players. And it's all right saying, I'm going to get rid of these players, or I'm going to hint at getting rid of these players. I think that's as important as spending the 200 million in the summer, because we're terrible at this. So look, Rashford will be easy to get rid of. Sancho, we've already done the deal. But Antony, I mean, Lindelof and Eriksen are walking out with no contracts. I mean, that to me would be a massive step forward if we could actually start selling players. But as I said, Terry, I think the big problem we've got with the summer is that we won't do anything till July because of the financial year. Because if we didn't spend in January, we're not going to spend in June, because that's the financial year. So we'll start spending in July. International tour will be mid-July. Pre-season will be first week of July. I don't see players coming until August again. And then you're starting a season, like you say, where things might not start clicking till Christmas. And by that time, you're writing another season off. And I'm just worried about how many seasons we're going to write off.
Mate, listen, I hear you on that. I have the same concerns. And this is why I always think it's important, because I think on the surface, if you look at your tweets and my tweets, people would think that we completely see things differently. I see where you're coming from. I understand it. And they are my concerns too. The positive I would say is this, that the last summer is the most amount of money we've ever raised in the summer through selling players, which is an improvement. And again, I look for changes and what's different. I actually want the club to, no matter how poor we are in terms of cash, I want us to say we're even poorer. Because I actually think I feel that helps you get players at a cheaper price, especially if those players want to leave. Because typically when a player wants to leave a club, clubs will facilitate that. I think one of the biggest mistakes we made a decade ago was when Woodward came out and said, we can do things in the transfer market that nobody else can. I've always felt that led to clubs increasing that Man United tax and going, oh, really? Well, he was a 30
That only works,
player.
doesn't it? Like somebody in the chat just said, we're linked to Edison. That only works if you're the only customer in the shop.
No, I agree.
And if Man City and Liverpool want Edison and we want him, we ain't getting him, are we? So
no, I agree with that, mate. And I think that's where I feel that there isn't any, yes, I want us to plead poverty because I think it helps reduce the price of players. At the same time, if you're in a bidding war with somebody else, you're going to pay a price. What we need to make sure we don't do is end up like we did it with Maguire. We got into a bidding war with Man City. I think we both agreed similar prices, but City said we'll pay in installments, and we said we'd pay upfront cash, which meant we were 87 million euros down, or whatever that is, 75 million pounds down in cash straight away. Those are the types of mistakes we have to avoid. So, was he worth that amount of money? Absolutely not. He's been a good centre back at times for us. He's had some calamity moments as well. But if we'd have paid what he was worth, and that was around 45, 50 million, there'd have been money left to rectify or buy better or add to it. And that's what we need to get better at sometimes is, look, we know we really want that midfielder, but is he really worth 90 million just because Liverpool are bidding it or just because Tottenham are willing to pay that money? I'm not saying Spurs would spend 90 million. That's where we need to be clever in these circumstances. And for years, one thing I've said to fans, and it's ironic that we're now talking about it from the other direction, this notion of it's not my money, I don't care. No, you should, because if you just overspend and undersell, you run out of cash. It's something we need to be far more. We need to scrutinize far more the price we're paying for players than ever before. We've got to reduce what we spend and increase what we sell for as best we can. Because again, that just generates over a 3-year period, that might generate 2 extra players for your squad that you need versus having this black hole. So look, I get where you're coming from. It's a massive summer. The sales are a big thing as well. And that's why I don't know about you, all these players that we have out on loan, I've seen some United fans go, why are we hyping up what Anthony's doing? Keep hyping it, everyone. Mm-hmm. Because when La Liga,
Rashford, yeah,
exactly. When La Liga, this is where I don't mind the media Like sometimes I do think we don't control the own narrative about our club well enough. And we side, because I keep saying it on my shows, I ain't siding with the media, even if they agree with something I say. Where were they for 20 years about the Glazers when they were calling us sport brats for moaning? They ain't our friends now. They're not our friends at all. Don't let the fox in the hen house. Equally, where I will side with the media is when La Liga and all the Spanish publications saying Man United are idiots for not getting the best out of Anthony. Let's retweet it. Let's push that narrative, because how can Real Betis go, we only want to pay 20 million when your own league is saying he's a superstar? No, you're paying us 60. We might get that. We might get 50. And this is where United fans sometimes play the game a little bit, but play the game in favor of your own club. Please. Just once. Just once.
It's like those people who want Rashford to fail. And I'm like, no, I want him to go. But I want him to score. I hope he scores tonight. Like, I want him to play well, because then Barcelona are there, Villa are there. You get a 5 million more. It just helps you out, and money is so tight at the moment. Andy Atherton says Mark and Terry, the goats together on United stand. Thank you very much for that. Macedonian says the last time Man United won the league, my dad had a full head of hair. We need to get those Glazers out. Unapologetic says invest in a stadium, but not the team. Just think in 5 years' time we can lose all our home games in a shiny new stadium. Still debted up to our eyeballs. Well, look, I think that's what we've spent the last hour talking about, really. Yeah. It's the stadium will be great whenever it happens, but what happens in between then? In fact, actually, what happens when you built it? Like, because Arsenal had no money for 10 years. So these are things that need to be learnt and fleshed out and questioned. An issue I had with the interview is I heard a lot about improving Man United, the business, and very little about improving Man United, the football team. I think that's a great point by Patrick. I don't think we've had the questions about, as we mentioned, about Amorim. Andy Hale says stadium announced to justify season ticket prices hikes. They normally announce next season's. They are going to hike the prices on the season tickets. I've heard that from very good authority. So yeah, get ready for that. I think that was inevitable anyway. I'm with you on thinking about this stadium, but just a question to Summer. And what would you say if it works and United start to do well again, mate? My negativity 100% always is very constant. If you don't understand me or you get angry with me and Goldbridge is losing it, as some people were saying last night, let me just give you a little key to the recipe, right? Glazers. They annoy the shit out of me. I can't stand them. I can't believe what they've done to the football club, and I can't stand the fact they're going to be here for 20 years. That's my main frustration. And I actually think that Sir Jim's just a puppet of them after that interview last night, which actually makes me hate the Glazers even more. But mate, you've seen me when Man United win. Like, I can separate that. I've seen Man United win the Champions League with the Glazers. So trust me, I want this team to win. I am not the person that wants this team to fall apart. I think we might be in a worse situation next year or in 2 years. It's very realistic. But I want us to do well. Like, life's too short to want to get proved right on failure. I want to get proved wrong on success. Anders says, Sir Jim Radcliffe said he will unequivocally back Amorim in the summer, but also has to back the decisions of the recruitment team. Barada, Wilcox, that's concerning. Hey, fair point, isn't it, Terry? At the end of the day, I got told by somebody this week who I respect that they'd been told a long time ago by Man City people that Barada ain't all that. Wilcox came in from Southampton. Look, they might be under the radar at the moment, but their time will come in the summer. The scrutiny will come. There's a lot. Look, there's a lot that's got to go right at United. A lot. And only one thing's got to go wrong to pour it all down. So percentage-wise of us getting back is far from a bloody guarantee anyway.
What I would say to Anders in that comment is that this is where I agree with Sir Jim. You've already stated, Mark, and we all agree. I think he stayed away from the footballing conversation because he's not a football man. He's a fan of football. If you got him to speak about being a petrochemist, I bet he could. I mean, he'd bore the socks off you, but I bet he could speak about that in intricate detail. I bet he could break down a business plan and speak about it amazingly, but he's not a football person. And I don't want the owners of our clubs, bankers, marketing experts speaking football. At the same time, his job is to hire people like Barada and Wilcott that are meant to know what they're doing on a footballing level. I would be more worried about a billionaire petrochemist overruling the key football decision makers than I would be trusting the key football decision makers. I think in the last 12 years, one of our biggest mistakes was letting bankers and marketing experts make footballing decisions over that of the qualified football professional. So I think that you have to have that hierarchy in there as an example, and you have to kind of trust them to get it right. So for me, I get that point from Anders that it's concerning, but I think it's all in one. Amorim, Barada, and Walcott need to agree on a direction, and then they just need Sir Jim and, of course, the Glazers to sign off on spending that money. That's the right way to work it. I think it becomes problematic in the long term if a non-footballing senior decision maker is overruling the football decision makers they brought into the club, because then what's the point of having them? We might as well save the salary and give the free lunches back if Sir Jim's making the decisions. So I'm not against that process personally.